Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to our podcast. My name is Terry Savage.
And I am April Griggs.
And we are Women in the Trenches. Now, let's remember who she is. She's that young girl or woman who has faced challenges and becomes aware of the trench, that hard place, difficulty, or obstacle that causes her to grow and develop into a better woman. The biblical context for trench means spiritual warfare, times of hardship, and the need for faith and reliance on God. Last week, we talked about Mary, the mother of Jesus, the complexity of her pregnancy, the obstacles she faced, and how we as women can relate and be encouraged. Life is filled with discovery, and while on this journey called life, amid all of our challenges, we blossom and become beautiful through the work of God's Spirit. Remember, ladies, we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and God has been and always will be our help. Tonight, we want to reference something that was mentioned in our previous podcast. April, you made a statement last week and said, ladies, don't be so mean. The question is, what makes us so mean? We know it's not God's best for us, but how did we get to that mean place?
Well, just reflecting off the statement, why are we so mean to one another? I kind of reflect on the fact that a lot of times I think it comes from a place of misunderstanding. A lot of times we work or we operate off of impulse. Sometimes we are triggered by our past, and then we are finding ourselves in a current situation that reminds us of that hard place. A lot of times I think that if we would actually look at somebody else's point of view, then we could probably get a better understanding on where that person might be coming from. A lot of times I think that we assume the worst from people. And so we are thinking that they are trying to either be negative or attack our spirit. And so then that meanness shows up.
I agree. I believe anger, frustration, and bitterness can be the result of meanness. You know, we become absorbed with painful events, unmet needs, disappointments, and as a result, we're angry and bitter. In fact, Harvard Health Publishing says at the root of many angry feelings is a sense of powerlessness. When we are unable to improve a situation, a traffic jam, a job loss, a relationship breakup, etc., our frustration, sadness, letdown, and other negative emotions often converge into anger. So that sense of powerlessness, that letdown or relationship breakup can trigger negative emotions, creating an acrimonious environment. Now, the word acrimonious simply means angry and bitter. And according to James 3:16, where there is envy and strife, there is confusion and every evil work. Let's talk about it. In the 2018 horror romance film Acrimony, Taraji P. Henson, that's her name, Taraji P. Henson played Melinda, and Lyric Bent played Robert. This relationship became acrimonious over time, filled with anger and bitterness. Romance turns into horror. Let's get into the story.
So when I watched this movie, I guess some years back when it first came out, I was kind of beside myself. A lot of times when I watch these movies, it causes one to reflect on past experiences. But when we dive into this movie, Acrimony, what we do identify first is our main characters. Our main character is a young lady by the name of Melinda, and then her future spouse would be Robert. And so when this movie first starts out, it is Melinda in her older years talking to a psychiatrist about her current situation with Robert. As she is explaining what had taken place and what had gotten them to this terrifying place in their relationship, Melinda flashes back for the therapist on where it all begins. Melinda describes them on the university campus, and they run into each other by accident. Melinda was very upset because her papers went disarray, and Robert's as well. Later on, they show Robert coming to campus and trying to give Melinda her paperwork back that got mixed up with his. At that one point, when Melinda looked up and really looked at Robert with no anger in her eyes, she seen someone that she thought was beautifully made. She said that he was everything in a package that she ever wanted. It was very, very interesting because we see young love and we see it happening right in front of our eyes. Robert was very apologetic for the mix-up. Melinda decided to be a little bit sweeter in her tone because she was seeing something different in Robert. Fast forward into the movie, what they do show us is Melinda faces hardship. Her sisters, which there are two in this movie, they come to her and deliver news of their mother passing. Robert so happened to be there when they delivered this news. Fast forward, they have a funeral and Robert is there. The sisters are on defense because they're very protective of their little sister. They wanted to know all the details about Robert in his past. Did he have money? Where did he come from? What was his intent with their family? Robert explained. We also learn in the dialogue of the movie that Robert didn't have much. He had a mother at one point in time, but she gave him up to his grandmother, and his grandmother raised him to the age of 14. The grandmother then passed him along to her daughter, his aunt, and she raised him from 14 to adulthood. Robert's father was also incarcerated, and these things play a great part in this storyline. And so it's very, very interesting to see this dynamic unfold. As things went along, we also seen that Robert, he lived in this trailer on his aunt's property, and this is where he resided as he went on to continue his education. The movie does show that Melinda and Robert was young love. Robert had promises to Melinda of a home, boats, plans with kids, and a future. Melinda did listen to her sisters. They tried to give her advice about not giving too much information to Robert about what their mother had left for her in the inheritance. The mother had left her money and the home so that way she could have a place to stay as she grew. And so Melinda listened, but she didn't. As we follow the storyline, we see Melinda spending money on Robert and trying to help him and assist him in his education, and also bought him a car. Fast forward, the sisters tell Melinda, hey, we are going to get married and we're going to be moving out soon. You can see the eagerness in Melinda because she rushes to the phone to communicate this to Robert. But Robert answers with a different tone in his voice. Things have changed. He speaks to her differently. She couldn't understand why, but she was very suspicious on his behavior because this was not normal for Robert. And so she finds herself pulling up to Robert's mobile home, sitting outside, trying to convince herself not to go inside. But as she is sitting there, she gets more and more angry because she knows that something is taking place. She looks up, and when she sees that there is another woman in Robert's home, this infuriated her so badly. Her anger went from 0 to 100 real quick. We see Melinda taking her car and ramming it into the mobile home, flipping the mobile home over several times, damaging it. But not only was the mobile home damaged, Melinda injured herself. She ruptured her ovaries, she had internal bleeding, and she had to get a full hysterectomy at 21. She spent over 3 weeks in the hospital trying to heal and recover. Her sisters had a conversation with her about her anger. They stated that she had anger ever since she was a young, small child, and they encouraged her to do better because they knew that it could damage not only her physical body, but her future. Robert came to her and apologized. She accepted the apology, and shortly after, we see that Robert proposes to Melinda. She accepts it even without her sister's encouragement or support. She did have a friend that would encourage her and try to stay by her side. But as the movie goes on, we see that money gets smaller and her account starts to dwindle down to nothing. Because while Robert was trying to continue his education, Melinda was supporting the both of them in their marriage. He had created an invention that he was passionate about, and it seemed to me that God had must have dropped in his spirit that this thing was going to be great for them both. And this is the reason why things would come to pass in a great way for them in time. Terry, do you have any input on the first part of this scene?
I'm thinking about what you say. It's interesting how relationship and life moves. Once again, life is about discovery, right? So you have this young couple, of course, immature, but in love, and you're going by so many emotions. But what I see in this relationship is there is a development taking place. Both of them are investing in one another. Yes, she pours into him money, but I see the intimacy, the money, the time, and I see the integrity of this relationship as it grows. But one thing about young love is that we don't understand that love is a process, and there's layers, and so it's we learn as we go. And so the thing that I see in this, the development, the hardship, losing the money, and all of these things that of course happen in life, and they come against or challenge the marriage. And what I see also is that we as individuals do not have foresight. We don't. So none of us have foresight. That's why it's so important for us to consult with God concerning the matters of the heart. Issues related to love, emotions, and personal relationship. Sometimes we need to consult with God really often, because there's always a breakdown. There's breakdown in marriage. There's breakdown in any type of relationship. And so when things happen, as they're developing and they're discouraging, it became discouraging to her that here the money is absorbing. My husband doesn't have a job. And I believe the last time we spoke, you said this was an 18-year journey. And so now endurance is a necessity here. So yes, Robert proposes to her. I believe, like I said, he obviously believes that she's something good to invest in, and she believes that he's a good investment. And so I just really, really believe that, I just, in any type of development, I just believe that God is the source of our strength. And so we talk about her anger, the mismanagement of that anger, not getting that anger under control. Now you are in adulthood and you are going to face some challenges that's going to stir that anger. So I do believe that it is very important for us in a marriage, in a relationship, to give our heart to God. It's just important, because we'll realize that endurance is a necessity in any relationship. So that's what I see. And so, yeah, that's what I see. It's important to give our heart to God. It's important for us to matters of the heart, take them to God, because what we don't realize is marriage is a spiritual thing. Anything God created, there's a component of that thing that is spiritual. And so if it is spiritual and we are earthly, how do we interpret the things of God in that marriage, in that structure? So when the forces of darkness, when hardship comes, what do we go to? We go to what we think should be done. And I just believe that, God answers prayers. He knows the structure. Look at God. We are the church. We are the bride. He is the groom. And so he says to us in a relationship, building the foundation of a relationship, a marriage. He said, wives, submit yourself unto your own husbands as unto God. Husbands, he says, he tells the husbands to, basically, because I'm losing my train of thought, but he says, husbands, serve your wives, in other words, as Christ served the church and died for it. So we understand that there's a component of marriage that we cannot completely understand, and that is that it is a servant. We're both serving one another, and in hardship we need endurance, and through Christ we can endure, and that's where we get our encouragement. That's where we get our peace, and so that's what I see. I see that there's some things going on, and they need some strength. They need Christ right now.
Right. Most definitely, in relationships, there will be some trials and tribulations. Things won't always be what we would hope them to be. But if we trust and believe in what God says, then we know that things will turn out for the better. As we continue on reflecting on this movie, Acrimony, we kind of float off into the next scene. So what I've told you so far is Melinda is carrying the load. Robert is attending school and she is supporting him. We see that she is taking care of all the bills as Robert is pouring into his invention, which is a battery that's supposed to recharge itself. You see Robert going to school, but all you see is Melinda working. We also see that Melinda comes in and pays for Robert's last 2 semesters of college. She was hopeful at that point that things would make a turn, because then he could get a job to help to support and to take some pressure off of her. But unfortunately, Melinda finds out, even after graduation, that Robert had a hardship on getting employment. She finds out something new about her husband that he did not share in the beginning. Come to find out, Robert was involved in a robbery when he was a teenager. So this caused him to have a felony on his record. And if we reflect in today, I'm pretty sure you might know someone, or you even yourself might have an issue like this. And so it puts up roadblocks for one to be able to support themselves or even support their families, because they made a bad choice at a younger part of their life, or in a time that they was not as wise. We look at this thing, and so Robert explains to her that he did not think that this would prevent him, especially after he got a college education. And so, like you said, it was about 18 years that passed, and Melinda was still working hard. She had taken a second mortgage out on the home. Robert could only get odd and end jobs, and so just enough to really supply a minimum to the household. Of course, you remember that she injured herself, so there was no children there. It was just her and Robert. They said at times they would walk past each other like the other one was not there. And so you can see this relationship is in a hard place. Robert is pouring into his battery and everything that he has, and Melinda is pouring into Robert like he's her battery. And so we see 2 people emptying out and not taking themselves before the Lord. Fast forward into the next scene. Robert is aware or gets notification that his ex-girlfriend, the one that he was having, a relationship with in college, when Melinda caught him with the other woman. He runs into this lady. I do believe her name is Diana, if I'm not mistaken. And so he finds out that Diana works for Prescott. Now, Prescott is the company that Robert had been trying to contact for several years to listen to his pitch on his invention. He told Diana, "I think this is a blessing from God." And Diana said, "No, this is not a blessing. This is just a coincidence." And so Robert said, "No, I really feel like this is an opportunity. Would you please allow me to share with you my experience?" Diana kind of turned her head slightly because she wanted to know what happened to Melinda? Whatever happened to that relationship that they had in college? Robert went ahead and said, with a smile on his face, he said, well, I married her. And then, of course, Diana stepped back because she did not want to intervene or cause any confusion in Robert's marriage. Robert convinced her to please take the time and meet with him about his battery, and so she did. When they did meet, I do believe the scene was Diana entered Robert's vehicle and she dropped her identification in the vehicle, which later on we'll see that kind of comes with some problems with this. And so as we venture off into this thing, Melinda, she has to stop and think, what is going on with Robert as she's continuing on working. Robert is still trying to figure out things while she's still trying to figure out the bills. Terry, in this scene here, do you have any suggestions, or what did you think in your mind that you might have wished that Robert might have done in that instance? I know I was talking to myself as he was interacting with his ex.
That's a good question. I do. It's so funny. I think years ago, somebody wrote a book, Men are from Mars and Women are from Venus.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. We communicate different. That's why it's so funny. Every time I think of this scene, I think about the time I was in a relationship without God and now in God. Two different things. You learn how to bring your heart to the Lord. You learn how to bring your husband's heart to the Lord. It's an interesting thing because here I do see this man working on this battery. As I observe this man working on this battery, which something that he worked on in college, he had a purpose and he was determined to make this thing come to pass. And it was just, at one point, it was just his dream, but now it becomes their dream. We inherit things. And so he made some promises to his wife, and he meant that. And I think sometimes as women, as wives, we don't consider the man's heart. Yes, I'm paying all the bills. I'm stressed out. I'm stretched. But what should I do, God? What should I do? Because the truth of the fact of the matter is, as I see Robert, I see him feeling like a failure. I see him feeling like I promised my wife this. I want this to come to pass. Because remember in the scene when he got the conversation from Prescott and they say, don't call us no more. Don't come on our property. If you do, we'll have you arrested. His dreams went down. He looked up at his wife and said, tell me, do you still love me? That was important for him to have her support. She was his backbone for so long, carrying him. That motivated him to marry her. He knew this is a woman who really cares and loves me. And once again, marriage is, let me tell you something. Marriage takes courage. It takes courage. And we don't realize that it takes courage. But once again, I see this man's heart and I see her. And so I believe that there are times we have to get into God's presence and take our heart to God, take our husband's heart to God. God, what is going on? Tell me what to do. I need to hang on and I feel like giving up. So marriage takes cover. I'm reminded when God dropped it in my spirit. And now, mind you, I want to say, in any marriage, God wants you to fight. But now let's be realistic. I'm not talking about toxicity. I'm talking about if you observe this marriage and you look at this man, he's not beating on you. He's not, he's not destroying you in any way. He just has some hiccups. He has some struggles because we both had them. Then therefore, the Bible lets us know that we are supposed to what? Love our husbands. Love It takes endurance, right? And so, I remember when God went to Joshua and he said, have I not commanded thee, be strong and of good courage, be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with you whithersoever you go. God commands courage. Okay, but remember where Joshua was in this situation. He was going into the promised land. He was going into the future. He had hope and he had a future, and now he's going in, and look at God. He already knows it's going to be hard, but he said, listen, I want you to understand it's going to be hard. You need courage. I'm here. Remember what you need. I'm here. Remember what you need. It takes courage. We don't understand. Marriage takes courage. John English Lee says, spiritual courage is a steadfastness of heart given from God, built on hope that overcomes fear and perseveres in obedience. So we need to understand that we're human. We are only human. I remember this song. It just dropped in my spirit. I'm only human. It was a song out there. I'm only human. And so once again, in my human analogy, I can't see the spiritual things. I can't really see the breakdown. I can't see the noise in my husband's heart. He can't see the noise in my heart. You see what I'm saying? We're battling. Both of us are battling. And so I believe that marriage is built in faith. God built this thing. And so I need to be able to turn my heart to God. And so this is the answer that I wish that I would have been able to step into that movie and say, Melinda, let's get down and let's have a conversation with God. I know it's rough, girl, but I promise you, if you hang on in there, you're going to see all your promises come to pass. Don't God make us promises?
Yes,
He
does.
makes us promises because we are the church. We're his bride. He makes us promises. But this is the thing. We are going through some hard times. We struggle before we get to the promise. Do we give up on God? Does he give up on us? No, we need to press in. We need to get on our knees. We need to go into our word. We need to find out what God is communicating to us for us to fortify us, for us to get what he gave to us, what he promised to us. And I see that this man is hanging on to faith. He believes God gave him this promise. He's hanging in there, and he needs moral support. He needs his wife.
Right. We can see all of these things play out. I think people, when they watch this movie, they'll go into the great debate about who was right and who was wrong, just reviewing the first part of it. And there was times where I was torn because I was upset with Robert not working and financially providing for his family. But then there was times that I was upset with Melinda with her response of things. And I think that as time goes along, we mature in the way we respond and how we handle things. We get a better understanding on how to use our tongues. And then a lot of times we have to learn how to correct ourselves, especially when we know that we're wrong. It's okay to step away from the situation and then come back and revisit when you have a clearer head and you're not so much full of anger or you are torn about how to handle your mate or the person you are dealing with in your life. Consulting God in the middle of the chaos, trying to understand when you hear his voice, being able to decipher that is very, very important. When we look at the remaining of the story, what we find is Robert has put himself in a position where he's ran into the ex-girlfriend. She had talked with him and said that she would try to get him an interview with Prescott. Robert actually goes to Prescott and they talk to him about the battery. They are impressed, but they only offer him a certain amount of money and then they want total ownership of his invention. Robert said this is not a good deal. But can you imagine his back being against the wall because his wife just took out a second mortgage on their home? So they're about to lose their home. His wife is already overworked. Their relationship is falling apart at its seams. During this time, what we see is Robert walking out on these people saying, hey, this is not a good deal. I cannot give you my invention. And so that took a lot out of him. He returns back to his wife. He returns back to his family because at that time, the family had gotten involved to try to help save the home. At that time, his brother-in-laws and his sisters-in-laws was there, and they tried to come up with a plan to save their mother's home. The plan played out as Robert would actually come and work for their business, which they had a trucking and delivery business. Robert would drive the truck, but he had to make this one major delivery that could help them to be able to stay afloat. Robert promised to do these things. They were upset with him because they had just found out that he had turned down a large sum of money, even though they were in desperate need. And so it goes into Robert has to make a decision one day because he's driving the truck like he had promised. And he gets a phone call saying, hey, come, they're going to talk with you. But that same meeting was the meeting that he did not agree upon. And so you see Robert coming back from that meeting upset and disappointed that it did not go as he imagined in his head. And so his wife also found out about the wallet that was in his truck from her sisters. And so at that point, she thought Robert was cheating on her. He did not keep the promise that he had promised to her and the family. And then their home was being foreclosed on. And her husband decides to turn down the only money that they could have to save the home. Instantly, Melinda was full of rage again. She was very angry with Robert. She talked to him very sharply. He begged her. He tried to explain to her that he did not cheat on her. And he was trying to save them from losing the home, but he could not sacrifice what he's worked so hard for. Mm-hmm. As we look at this, it goes into them separating. Tyler Perry does a really good job of throwing terms out there. One of the terms that he posts in the movie is the word sunder. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's spelled S-U-N-D-E-R. It says that it means split, separate, divide, break apart. And so he tries to prepare the audience for what they're about to experience or see. And so it is a setup for everybody to be able to, I guess, wrap your mind around the emotions that are taking place. You see Melinda meeting up with her husband at the divorce office, and Robert comes alone, whereas Melinda is there with her sisters. So things have changed. She kicks Robert out of the home, which now makes Robert homeless. He has to go get an odd end job to try to stay afloat. Melinda's house has been on foreclosure. She had to move in with her sisters. So these two people have totally moved in two totally different directions. Devastating. Divorce is very devastating to a family. If you have not experienced it, I'm pretty sure you might have known someone who went through it. You have two people that were together and they are no longer together, and things have to be severed and cut. And so now they have to get adjusted to being and doing things on their own. As we wrap our minds around things, her sisters are encouraging her to move on, even before the divorce is final. Robert gets a phone call from his ex, Diana, trying to figure out what is going on. I remember Robert saying to Melinda before she kicked him out, he begged her, he said, I love you. Please do not do this. And so in those words, I felt like Robert was really trying to plead his case. He wanted her to look at him differently, like he wasn't someone there to try to use or take advantage of her. He just invested his time and energy into what he felt like was important, but he wanted to let her know that he seen value in her and what they had. Terry, you had mentioned to me at one point in time about a song that you had thought that kind of reminded you of Robert. What was that?
You know, I was when, like you said, they were here at this place of divorce, and he, you know, he had to sign this piece of paper, and I could see his eyes. He was like, "I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this." And so the song or dropped in my spirit, Tevin Campbell, and it's interesting, where in this song he says, "Tell me what you want me to do. My love is always here for you, so tell me what you want me to do." And he confesses, so to speak. He says, "There were times that I didn't show it, just how much I care for you. I'm so sorry." And he's saying, "Don't walk away, baby. Please don't leave me now." So that's what I saw in Robert's eyes. That's what I heard in his words, like, "Come on, let's keep this going." And so you know, that's why I say we got to take our heart to the Lord, you know, because he's hurting and he's saying, "I don't want to dissolve this. I don't want to sign this piece of paper." You know, and that's where he was. That's where he was.
Right. This movie is very touching. But as we kind of transition into the next phase, we're going to allow you to listen to Tevin Campbell and just trying to meditate on maybe some of your relationships or even the relationship in the movie. We ask you just to reflect, process, and if you have some questions or concerns, maybe you can share with us later on. But let's take a listen to Tevin Campbell, "Tell Me What You Want Me to Do."
Called me up and I came to see you. You say you've been awake all night. Ooh. It hurts me deep inside when I see you crying. Whatever's wrong, I'll make it right. If you understand how I feel, ooh, you should know that my love is real. Oh, tell me, what do you want me to do? My love is always here for you, so tell me, what do you want me There were times that I didn't show it, just how much I care for you. I'm so sorry. Now don't keep saying it's too late to think it over, baby. After all that we've been through, girl, I'm begging you, I'm down on my knees. Don't walk away, baby, please don't leave me. No, tell me, what do you want me to do?
beautiful song. One of the songs that I really, really like from back in the day. It kind of makes me have flashbacks of when I was younger. Tevin Campbell was out when I was in my teens. But let's go ahead and drop back in and try to wrap this thing up. The story kind of goes on with Robert signing the divorce papers, walking out because he felt like there was no reaching Melinda. He did tell her in the office in front of everyone that he loved her, and he wanted to make sure this is something that she wanted to do. She did not reply or respond. She was still angry because how things had turned out. She felt like he did not keep his promise. Robert walked away in the same situation where he is homeless. He's working. Melinda tries to move on. Her sisters are encouraging her to celebrate. 2025, they have parties now when you get divorced. And so we see this celebration of her ending it all. Her sisters were encouraging her to be able to find someone else that could do her better. Melinda shook her head and it seemed like to me disapproval, because it was part of her that she still loved Robert. She still wanted to believe in the thing that they first fell in love with. Her friend once again had stated, "I always believed that Robert loved you," even though the divorce papers have been signed. Melinda felt that. She walked out with another friend of hers and tried to move on with her life. Robert shortly got a phone call from Diana, his ex from college, and she reaches out to him and says, "Hey, where have you been? We have been trying to reach you. The company Prescott has been evaluating this thing, and they are trying to come up with another offer." He tells her about what has taken place with her and Melinda and how things have fell apart. The divorce had taken place. He was homeless. Then Diana eventually said, "Hey, I'm going to come and get you. We need to talk." She takes Robert back to her place and offers him to be able to freshen up because of his situation and where he was living. While Robert was trying to clean himself up and reflect, we see this young lady, Diana, sitting outside of the bathroom with tears in her eyes. And she says to Robert, "Robert, you are a good man." She goes, "I have heard people say that sometimes people will come in your life basically for a season, and sometimes they are not meant to go with you in your future." Robert sat there in silence. Later on, the next morning, Diana comes in and wakes Robert up and says, "Hey, I have some news for you." She tells him that the company has reevaluated. She hands Robert the folder, and in this folder, it was the offer that he had always dreamed of. It was millions, maybe even billions that could be made. He could keep his name on his invention, and he could also have the profit from the sales. Robert was so ecstatic, but at the same time, you seen him reflect on how far he had come and what he had lost along the way. And so it's mind-blowing on how this happened. You see him go to his ex-wife, Melinda, on her job. He has roses in his hand and he calls her. And she was very short with him. She said, "What do you want, Robert? I'll give you 2 minutes to talk to me." So Robert tried to rush. He said, "Melinda, I have always loved you from the beginning, and I will always love you. I wanted to let you know that my battery has now been taken by Prescott. I have gotten a contract for millions. It has finally happened." He even apologized to her for the dream not happening fast enough. He said, "I know this comes to you after our divorce, but I want to let you know that not only I am okay, but we are okay." He turns around and gives her a check for $10 million, I do believe, to be accurate. And then he reaches in his pocket and he gives her the keys to her mother's home. So not only does he buy that back for her, he lets her know that, "Hey, I'm always going to be here for you and I love you." He kisses her on the forehead and he walks away. Melinda is stunned that this has taken place after their divorce. She goes home angry with her sisters because she listened to them. They encouraged her to stop believing in her marriage, which it seemed like she was torn on either to stay or to go, but she listened to the advice that they were giving. So she found herself in a place now with her marriage end and Robert is living in their dream without her. She runs to Robert's side to try to talk to him. She goes to the penthouse that they dreamed about on the first floor overlooking the lake and the river. And at this time, she's trying to let him know that she still loves him and wants to be with him. But unfortunately, her surprise, his new fiance walks out. Devastating. You could hear a pin drop. She was shocked that this had taken place. And it was the woman that he had cheated on her with years ago. Rage filled up inside of her. You could see it in her eyes. She runs out the door and drives home angry. She finds herself obsessed with their relationship. She would watch it from afar on the internet. And she would actually send things to Robert's fiance that was not very encouraging. You know, we reflect on these things. Terry, do you have any input on the ending part of this thing?
Yeah, it was so sad actually to see that she was not able to receive the full inheritance that was promised in their discussion. And like I said, I look at this and I look at the church. I look at this and I look at the church, and I look how God, even He gives us all these promises. And so we have a tendency to fall short. You know what I mean? We fall short in faith, and we don't want to lose the entire inheritance. But, I also look at, how we can't figure everything out. We're battling with disappointment, disagreements. We need strength, and we need to encourage ourselves. And we can only get this through grace, through God. It's the truth. We have to take our problems, our marriages, our children. Is so imperative that we have to understand who God is in the earth. He is our strength. He wants us to receive every good and perfect thing, because that's what He said. Every good and perfect thing God wants us to, He shared with us. And so even when it comes to marriage is built on hope. It's built on love. It's built on faith. And so we may need to sit. I believe there are times we need to sit in His presence. Maybe you don't have the power to pray, but sometimes you can turn on worship. And that worship will bring your heart into God. It's written in the word that God can turn a stony heart into a heart of flesh. That means He can make this hard heart pliable, that He's able to communicate. We're in this place where Melinda was. Her heart was hard, and she couldn't even hear. She couldn't even understand the level of love that Robert had for her. And so because of that, when you sit in the presence of God, I promise you, sit in worship, sit in a place where He can reach your heart. And I promise you, He'll begin to reveal some things, because there are some things, there's hidden parts in our heart that we cannot see, and God will reveal. And I don't believe that this is just for the woman. This is just for the man. Both women and men alike, husband and wife alike, you can sit in the presence of God. The Bible lets us know, he says, consider your ways. When we sit in the presence of God and reflect, God will help us to consider our ways. He'll help us to see where we've made a wrong turn, what we need to do. It reminds me of the place where Jesus met this woman at the well. And in that place, she says, come see a man who told me everything I did. Sometimes we need to know what we did, and God will help us to understand how to prepare, how to encourage, how to get up and keep on moving. I even think about the time when, think about the loss. It's so disheartening. I reflect on the time where, when we talk about Joseph and Mary, look at what happened when Joseph found out that his wife was pregnant. It was perplexing for him. He couldn't understand, but look what the man did. The Bible says he went and he pondered on some things. And in his pondering, in the presence of God, the Bible says an angel came to him and told him, hold on, let me tell you what the situation really is. The thing is that sometimes we give our hearts to too many people. You got your friends in your ear. You got your sisters who really didn't see the good in him in the beginning. If somebody comes to you and they don't see the good in the beginning, you may not want to look to them for advice. And even somebody who wishes you well, at the end of the day, you need to call on the Lord. You need to go in the word. Like you said, meditate on some things that God says so you can reel your heart back in to the place of God consciousness to resolve this marriage. Because imagine if Joseph would have went on impulse, everything would have just went to crumbling. It would have not come to pass. The ideal that God had for Mary and Joseph, it would have been somehow, we don't know what it would have turned out to be, but it was successful,
Yeah, It definitely was. And once again, in the Bible, it says, in order to be able to recognize God's voice, you have to compare what you're hearing to the Bible. Listen to your conscience, pay attention, spend time with God. We as married people can fail miserably in our interactions with one another. Why? Disconnectors such as work, life, mindsets. We come from two different backgrounds. God has to help us with this. Conflict resolutions, things that could help, how to handle the conflict, building bonds like date night, understanding each other, effective communication, preventing misunderstandings and good communication. Just other tips that you can reflect on. Conflict resolutions, couples who handle conflict generally and repair it positively to have stronger relationships. Building bonds, shared activities, rituals, and gestures can help build emotional bonds. There's several different things that we can touch on, but let's go ahead and wrap this up towards the end of this movie because we want to know for those who have not watched it. And so what we see is Melinda is moving away from Robert's penthouse, angered, filled because this woman is taking her place. We see them fast forward that Melinda goes and destroys the woman's wedding dress by pouring acid on it. The judges come back in again because they told Melinda not to be around Robert and his new wife. She was so full of anger she could not even see herself. And so things kept happening. Fast forward, Robert and Diana get married. They're on the boat that was promised to the both of them. And they are cruising towards their honeymoon. They are not aware that not only on this ship was Robert, Diana, and the staff, but Robert, Diana, the staff, and Melinda. She had made her way there. The wife gets up and excuses herself and goes down below. She noticed that her wedding dress is missing. Robert is still up gazing at the stars, probably thanking God for everything that has come to pass. He looks up and there is Melinda. Melinda is holding him by gunpoint and she asks Robert, why did you give what you promised to me to another woman? Robert reminds her that he's always loved her from the beginning to the end and he still cares for her, but she divorced him. And so that made him have to put himself in a position to move forward. Melinda accidentally shoots Robert in the side. Staff runs. And then when staff runs up to try to find out what's going on, Melinda starts to shoot at the staff. She tells them to jump overboard and they do. The wife sees this going on and she runs upstairs and then she sees that it's Melinda. So she takes off running in the opposite direction. Also, Melinda goes behind Diana and tries to have a conversation. She wants the ring to be given to her. She does not notice that Robert is in the midst. He comes and pushes Melinda over the edge. Melinda went into the water with a silk press and came out with a wet and wavy. We did not realize that she was going to get out of the water and get back on the boat. But she did. I don't know. She got some pretty good swimming skills. But she jumped back up on the boat. But before she did, Robert had instructed his new wife to take the boat, the life-saving boat, and go back and get the staff in order to help them. So at this time, we're looking at Melinda and Robert on the boat alone. Melinda has lost her gun in the ocean. And then so she picks up an axe and swings it at Robert. She injured him again, but we notice that the chain from the anchor wraps around her ankle and pulls Melinda over to her death. Unfortunately, this relationship ended terribly. We encourage you to listen to the voice of God. We need to not only consult our family and friends in our relationships, but we also need to make sure that we put God first in every decision, even in our younger days and in our older days as we're making a decision. I have heard that the most important thing you can do is find a partner that is good for you. And so you want to pick wisely. We really appreciate you coming and talking with us today. Terry, do you have anything else that you would like to say before we close out?
No, I believe you said it all. The encouragement is, look to God. Look to the hill from whence cometh your help. Press into him. Find out what he says in his words. He wants us to have his best. He has our best interest at heart, and he wants to give us the best. And so, I believe you said it all.
All right. That's great. We want to thank you again for chiming in to Women in the Trenches. And we want you to know that we will be back March the 25th of 2025 from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Our email address is WINTT at yahoo.com. Once again, that's WINTT at MYYAHOO.com. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this evening. And as we close, we will see you again. And thank you for listening. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. Once again, we want to say thank you for you listening, and we will see you again.
You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail. And there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep, my faith will stand. So